Okay, the theory I will be critiquing today is a theory of life in the round by Alfreda Chapman and published in 1999 in JASIST. Okay, so basically this theory is in response to her theory of information poverty, and there they looked at a retirement community called Garden Towers and looked at how women in a retirement community form their information needs based on self-protective behaviors. So how they use secrecy and deception to pretty much handle their life world. And then this is also, in another paper, where she developed the theory of information poverty, she talked to janitors and how their life world was distinguished from others based on the information that they could not get. So hindrance and information seeking between these two worlds. So it's not easily shared. But she had a problem with this when she looked back at her earlier work before information poverty and saw that there were signs of secrecy and deception in previous research that she had done. So she wanted to go back and look and see if maybe she missed anything else. So that's when she decided to look into prisons. But when she looked into prisons, she didn't really find that there were problems. She found that prisoners were able to have some comfort in an uncomfortable place where they had a degree of security and even protection. So she wanted to know how these prisoners reshaped their worlds to have a normative existence and business as usual, as she calls it, in their prison environment. So the way she structured her paper, she reviewed literature on women's prisons and found that first there wasn't a lot of research, and they didn't look at their lived experiences and how they use information. It was more as a sociological or legal viewpoint. And she built all these views on sort of what I think is a social constructivist point of view, using Goffman's ideas of performance and reciprocity and social norms. Basically, the idea that how you appear is how people should treat and value you. And Luckman she used as how people in a small world share beliefs. So the small world in this case would be the prisoners. And similarly to her information poverty work, Merton defined insiders, outsiders as communities that are fundamentally different, and because of that, the way they share information is very difficult, problematic. And that's one critique I have later, is that they didn't really talk to the guards or the rules makers in this situation. So what Alfreda Chapman did was she interviewed 80 maximum security female prisoners at a prison and did ethnographic work and interviews and developed a theory of life in the round. And that theory, here it is quoted: "A life in the round is one lived within an acceptable degree of approximation and imprecision. It is a life lived with a high tolerance for ambiguity, but is also lived in a world in which most phenomena are taken for granted. Occurrences are viewed as reasonable and somewhat predictable. It is a world in which most events fit within the natural order of things." And what she means by this is really the word round. So I will meet you around noon, I have a touch of arthritis. These kind of imprecise information practices that people use, and she contends that this is because the precision of the outside world would be too difficult for prisoners to cope with. And one of her propositions is that this will have a negative effect in information seeking if you were to make perhaps like a quantitative research to test this theory. And people will not search for, or female prisoners will not search for information if they do not need it within their specific social context. But it allows also before information seeking process begins. So in this, she critiqued other information research where it starts with an intent. It starts where people are looking for information. And this theory allows for people to interact with even before they start that information search process. Okay, so the basic 6 propositions that she lists for her theory are: once you become an insider, you can set boundaries on behavior. Your private behavior is publicly scrutinized. The creation of their worldview is through those norms of scrutinization and of private behavior, where as a prisoner, what you can do and what you know is always looked at by the guards and by other inmates. And life is taken for granted unless there's a problem, unless you come up for parole or some event breaks into your small world. And members in the round will not cross boundaries to seek information unless, under certain circumstances, if there's a critical information that they need, there's relevant information they need, or there's some kind of breakdown in how their life in the round is set up. Okay, and this is how she applied her theory, which is these 6 propositions, into the prison population. So she first starts that accurate, precise information adds stress and concerns that cannot be acted on in prison. So every time someone from outside of prison says, "Oh, your grandfather's sick," there's nothing the prisoner can do. So that adds stress to them, and so they want to actively avoid learning about those kinds of things. But then on a positive side, they're insulated from those bad things that happen to them. So if they were homeless, or if they had work problems or drug problems. And here Goffini again says these social characteristics should be valued by others, and all those things create new norms that are based in this present world. And then she also applies this to her previous work in information poverty, where users seek information based on 2 traits, basically trust and believability. And this is because they're seeking information in their small group where they really only trust people from where they're from. Okay, so what I wrote about in my paper were critiques to her entire process, her theoretical positioning, but then how she applied it to prisons. So it's very difficult. I've done some ethnomethodology, and it's difficult to test the validity of this. And it's difficult also to create her concepts and propositions, I think, because the codes that she made probably coded into her previous concepts from information poverty. So it's difficult to see how this is like a very new theory. The propositions can be somewhat vague, especially, let me see. Yeah, here, life is taken for granted unless problematic. What's hard is the difference between that proposition in normalized life and in the prison population. There are probably sociological things that have some impact in how those are created, but I see that she's only looking at their information use. So, and that's the other thing, is the definitions of all these things. She does a really good job. I love her writing style, because she really defines what she means by performance and narrative and norms, and how this is used in other theoretical positions from outside of information science. Okay, and the problem that how this is applied to the population at large is brought up. Is this only something that happens in prisons, or is this any time? And also for information poverty, there's a gendered aspect, because I think in both those cases she looked at women in her studies, which is not a problem, but it could be viewed by others as a problem. Okay, what about interpretive practices? So she talks a lot about prisons, and I know Foucault wrote about prisons and this kind of, panopticon effect. And so I'm wondering if she could have used these kind of ideas to look for when she did her ethnographic views, because if she hadn't read, for example, Foucault, she might not see those concepts and meanings and structures there. And then how are these norms created? Because there are the social practices, I understand, of the female prisoners, and then there's social practices they had before they came into prison. But then when they're in prison, I think Chapman could have explained more the rules and just activities that they go through all the time, and how that maybe creates some of the rules. So when they talk about what guards are doing or telling them, how they can create strategy and tactics to overcome these stressors. So I think that could be a big influence on how they view and value their information practices. Okay, and just quickly, some related literature I thought that could be important. Well, the creation of rules and norms. So I think in any society, just not society at large, or these small community groups, is how these rules and norms kind of intermingle, and how rules are made and then people use them in certain ways for their own sort of selfish needs, and how they could be switched and changed when a huge life event happens, such as going to prison. And I think another from education is situated learning, where as Chapman explains, these lifers have their own kind of rules, and there's different subgroups within prisons, but they're always being either reified, or new people are coming in and trying to change them. So I thought just situated learning, like how these prisoners learn how to interact with each other, and any kind of problems they have, or behaviors can be kind of reified in those ways. So that's it. Thank you for putting up with this virtual sort of presentation. I just want to end with these discussion questions that, so in a meta-theoretical place, what critiques can you make? Does she make a strong case for a theory of life is around? And are there examples of round items or terms in libraries? And then how can you apply this theory to your research? Okay, well, I hope this was somewhat bearable, and thank you, and I will see you guys when I return.